I've been lamenting how ever since the start of the latest Israel-Gaza conflict, how familiar this seems, how rinse and repeat it is, and how nothing ever seems to change. How these things they break out. You know, the Gazans try and take down as many as Hamas is trying to take down as many Israelis as they can, but of course the Israelis have overwhelming firepower and are able to mete out collective punishment against the 2 million people of Gaza, although there's now less than that, less than the number that they started with, quite a bit less. The latest number I saw was 7,000 less. The Israelis, last I checked, were reporting casualties of 1,400, or deaths, I should say. I'm sure there's a lot more injuries than that, but deaths on the Israeli side, 1,400. On the Gaza side, 7,000. And, the narrative has been for my entire life, every time this happens, well, it doesn't matter when Gazans die, because those are just human shields. But of course it matters when Israeli citizens are killed. So Israel can kill as many civilians as they want on the Gaza side. It doesn't matter because they're human shields, we're told. So that's a get out of jail free card. So the 7,000 Gazans that are dead are not enough to avenge the 1,400 Israeli deaths. It's not a fair punishment yet, because those 7,000 Gazans are not equal to even the life of one Israeli. And that excuse has worked for most of my life. People have just thought that. But and even in the internet age, even back in 2014, I think, was the last big clash between Israel and Gaza. I remember Max Blumenthal and I think Dan Cohen, maybe. They made a documentary called "Killing Gaza." I remember that was a big deal at the time, and it was very much counter the narrative. It was a very, very subversive documentary that undermined Israel's narrative, showing that there were in fact innocent civilians in Gaza whose lives were destroyed by the Israeli bombing campaign. But now, in 2023, it seems like, at least if you look on Twitter, people are able to see that much more openly. It's much more obvious, and there are more people waking up to that, to the point that even now, Elon Musk, who I think he's an interesting proxy for sort of the middle in America. Elon Musk is clearly not right-wing. He's, after the last couple of years, he's clearly not left-wing. He just sort of is a somewhat neutral, common sense kind of guy. I'm not a big, I've never been a big Musk enjoyer on this channel. I praise him when he does some good things, but overall, I don't think he's a great hope for America or something like that. I don't love the guy. He's fine. But he occupies an interesting position in American politics, and so when you see his stance on a controversial issue, it gives you an indication of how other people at that point in the political spectrum, people who sort of straddle the line between the left and the right, who don't really feel at home in either of them, kind of where they're shifting. And if you remember, there was when the Ukraine war first broke out, he promised Starlink for everyone in Ukraine. He was going to give free Starlink to Ukraine, the Ukrainian military, and the Ukrainian military was using Starlink in order to direct and plot their bombings, on Russian positions. And after the Ukrainians bombed Crimea, in which there were videos of civilians running and screaming, and the Ukrainians were putting these out as propaganda videos, positive, saying, "Ha ha ha! Look at these stupid Russians, running away from our bombs in Crimea." It's like, wait, I thought Ukraine's position was that the Crimeans were true Ukrainians who were under Russian occupation, but yet you're cheering on terrorizing people who are supposedly your own people in Crimea, and that was kind of a big moment, along with, I think there was some ship that got sunk, to where Elon Musk pulled Starlink and said, no, you're not going to use my technology to prosecute your war. I don't want to be involved in this. And that was around the time when the public sentiment in America on the Ukraine war really started to shift against Ukraine. It's not that Russia was becoming more popular, it's that Ukraine was becoming increasingly less popular. And so now we've got an interesting development regarding Starlink from Elon Musk, where he has now promised to give Starlink and keep Starlink open for, he gave a very strong caveat. It was something like registered or renowned or well-established international humanitarian groups in Gaza, which is a big deal because Israel has sealed off Gaza. There's no communication in or out of Gaza. We have no idea what's going on the ground except for what Israel tells us. And of course, no one can get in or out of Gaza. It's hermetically sealed. So the lights have gone dark. There's no water. There's no communication. And there is no escape. But Musk now is vowing to open a line of communication with the outside world. Now, he's not giving it to everyone. He's giving it to a very select few people in Gaza. But the people who are unquestionably the most deserving of it is people who are trying to do, humanitarian work, rescue people from the rubble of buildings, treat the wounded, feed the homeless, which is probably at least half the country, or not country, half of the little area known as Gaza. Half of the Gaza population is basically homeless now because Israel told them to evacuate from their homes. And so it's a humanitarian catastrophe. So if anyone is going to have resources, you would think, okay, well, it's got to be those groups at the very first. And people are, some people, especially on the pro-Palestinian side, are saying, hey, we appreciate it, Musk, but it's like, hey, why don't you do this to everybody? To me, I think Musk wants to do that. What he's doing here, by giving it to the narrowest amount of people possible, first of all, it's a big enough shot across the bow against Netanyahu that he is going against Israeli policy, because Israel does not want anyone to have communication in or out of Gaza, whether they're humanitarian, whether they're media, whether they're civilians or Hamas. He wants everyone silent. Musk is circumventing that with now a small group of people. And so what he's doing is he's not taking a side. He's not taking the Palestinian side. He's making a very reasonable decision that just happens to counter Israeli policy. But in doing so, he exposes how unreasonable the Israelis are. That's why this is a smarter move than just giving free Starlink to everyone in Gaza, even though, that would be, you could argue that is much more, of a moral position, because everyone in Gaza, whether they did anything wrong or not, and of course 99.9% of people there have done nothing wrong. They are perfectly innocent people trying to live their lives in a hellhole. But Musk doesn't want to be, accused of necessarily right up front of, giving free internet to Hamas or something like that, because they know that they would smear him and they would destroy the impact of the gesture. This is because it depends on whether you're looking at it from the situation on the ground versus the geopolitical impact of this. And from the international politics here, it is almost impossible for Israel to argue, or for anyone else to argue against what Musk just did. But they're infuriated, I assure you, because this is definitely against their plan. The American Zionists are going to be furious with Elon Musk. They're going to see this as betrayal, and Zionists who might have been pro-Musk when it comes to Twitter and free speech and all that stuff, they're going to be fuming over this, and they're going to say, haha, Musk was never on our side to begin with, and they're just going to, it's like spritzing them with holy water. They're just going to, that's what this is. You go, oh, well, holy water, it's just water, everyone needs that to live. How could water ever harm someone? But no, you throw it on the demon, and it burns up. It writhes in pain. And that's what this is. He's drawing out the demonic nature of Israel's war. He's going to, and I'm not saying that Musk is playing 4D chess. I'm not trying to say, oh, he's so smart. I'm not one of these Musk-tards who worships him. I mean, they've been around long before he owned Twitter, long before he ever got involved in anything political, international politics. I'm just looking at whether he intends this or not. This is a smart move that will have a positive impact, and it's going to have a more powerful impact than if he just ripped the Band-Aid off and gave it to everybody, because he's drawing them out. Israel is liable to come out and condemn him for this, to pick a big public fight for him, and that's going to make them look and expose them for being completely unreasonable. At which point then he will have the leverage in the eyes of more people to expand this, give Starlink to more and more folks in Gaza, and people who would have initially condemned him if he just gave it to everyone and bought into the lie that, Elon Musk is a secret agent of Hamas. They will praise him. That's my guess. Now, I'm not saying that he's going to take this route. I'm not saying that he planned any of this out. What I'm saying is that what could happen, and what I would do if I were in his position. Go ahead, let Israel say that humanitarian organizations in Gaza, international humanitarian organizations from other countries, are no different than Hamas in the eyes of the Israeli government, and that giving them access to communications with the outside world is an act of war against the Israeli state. Let them come out and make that case. And you know what? I don't cheer on the self-destruction of Israel no more than I cheer on the deaths of the 1,400 Israelis or the 7,000 Gazans. I lament all of this. As much as it is, on the other side of the world and shouldn't affect me, it does bother me when people die. I was very much bothered by the genocide in Yemen. That's the only way you can call it, because the killing was so efficient and systematic. And that was perpetuated, enabled by my own government. In this case, I think that even if the U.S. were to pull out, I don't think that Israel is as much of a paper tiger, certainly as the Saudis. I don't think that if the U.S. just said, we don't like this, we're gonna wash our hands of this current war in Gaza, I don't think that Israel would stop. And so, politically, or I guess in a realist sense, I feel detached from the situation. But on an emotional level, it eats me up inside. I wish none of this were to happen. But the only way that it's going to stop is for the remaining people in the world to recognize the truth of the situation. But even then, there is not any kind of a peace anywhere in sight. But a good start, a good step towards peace, is recognizing the evil of the status quo. So, with that said, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.